So the new Metal Gear game has come out, starring the beloved and likable character Oh hey Raiden. I remember you. You're in a game. Jokes aside, for better or for worse, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is out. After a horror development cycle where Kojima basically decided he didn't know what the hell he was doing. So he gave it to these guys, who I have no idea what the hell they are doing. But I love it. Bayonetta is probably one of the best action games of this generation, and I thoroughly enjoyed Vanquish. Honestly, they seem like a perfect fit for Kojima's style, and seems like a pretty natural choice. However, since the game has come out, the reception has been somewhat lukewarm. What do I think? I don't know, let's find out. Why else would you watch this goddamn video, you idiot? Let's start off with the story. Metal Gear Rising is probably one of the most ridiculous stories I've ever witnessed. Metal Gear Solid's saga, if you will, was never really that credible when it came to realism. If anything, the series was very well versed in the idea that it is in fact a video game. And the plot, while very entertaining, had numerous leaps in logic that didn't make a whole lot of sense. The games were more vessels for ideas, genes, memes, scene and sense respectively. Metal Gear Rising takes it to a complete extreme. Whether or not this was Platinum's influence or Kojima's own vision for where to take the game, I don't really know. But you know what? I loved every second of it. It was a brilliant change of pace and something outside the realm of what we're used to from Metal Gear Solid. The plot focuses on Raiden, the protagonist of Sons of Liberty, turned pretty badass cyborg ninja in Guns of the Patriots. Raiden has always been a very conflicting character for a lot of people, and for good reason. He was essentially the antithesis of Solid Snake, someone who asked countless questions and bowed down to command. In Sons of Liberty's case, the Patriots. He was feminine, constantly emasculated by both his enemies and Solid Snake himself, and generally he was kind of a whiny teenager. There's a video that explains it better than I ever could, so I suggest you check that out. The point is that the characterization of Raiden was intentional, and his development in Guns of the Patriots actually makes a lot of sense to me. He's been defined by his experience and became essentially a hero, standing up for something he believed in, like Snake, rather than simply obeying blind commands and trying to live up to the expectations he set for himself that he was never ever going to reach. Revengeance is an extension of Raiden's development as his own character and allows us to get more of a glimpse into his past and motivations, all the while extending the Metal Gear universe after Guns of the Patriots. The plot is, as I said, ridiculous. It revolves around Raiden working for a PMC trying to prevent the abduction of children who are going to be turned into robots. Stay with me here. Since Raiden finds this sick and disgusting due to his past as a Liberian child soldier under Solid Snake, this affects him personally, thus beginning his quest for Revengeance. Yes, the title is stupid, but I'm not going to hammer on about it because I'm sure every Kotaku commenter ever has made some sort of hilarious quip about it. The plot sounds simple, and quite frankly there isn't much to it. It gets a little more complex towards the end, but comparing this to say Guns of the Patriots, it's relatively light. The themes presented are once again an extension of Raiden's arc in MGS 2 and 4. It's about Raiden trying to justify his reasons to keep on fighting, whether it's out of a desire to protect or seek revengeance. It does this while also providing a commentary on American values and the reason we fight for anything. The plot deals more with Raiden's past as a child soldier, and while a neat little snippet, I never really found it all that interesting. The effect of being under control by the Patriots would have had more of an effect, and sadly in this game it's kind of glossed over, especially when the topic of memes and motivation are brought up, which were also heavily a part of Sons of Liberty. The whole American politics and materialism threads are actually not that bad, and I didn't find it that obnoxious, because it's kind of a part of who Raiden is. I think it's just too overdone for such a serious theme and, let's be honest, a ridiculous game. Sometimes maybe an exaggerated or distorted view of ourselves can help us to see things from a distance and look at both Raiden and ourselves more objectively, however, so take it as you will. Overall, the plot is decent, with some neat characterization. I liked Raiden, I liked the bosses of the Desperado unit, even Sonny was kind of neat. And generally, the plot was fast-paced and nicely presented, even if it is relatively brief. Keep in mind this is still a side story and it shouldn't really be seen as the next chapter of the Metal Gear saga. It's very much self-contained, so that's why I felt it was necessary to judge it on its own merits rather than compare it to, say, Guns of the Patriots. But that's enough for story. Let's move on to graphics. The game runs extremely well at 60 FPS and the graphical fidelity associated with Kojima's team is continued with relative success. A lot of neat animations are thrown in and the chaos that often surrounds Raiden is very impressive to look at, since it's such a fast-paced game. My only gripe with the graphics are the cutscenes, ironically, in which the characters look kind of weird at times and the animation doesn't seem quite right. Whether this is translation or simply a more specific style that Platinum were going for, I don't know, but I can't say I was fully into it. It's a minor problem, but I found it particularly noticeable. The artistic style of the game, however, is actually really good, which is weird for me because I always thought the dynamic of geckos and cyborgs in 4 was really silly and I didn't like it all that much. I think the difference here is that Rising fully embraces the craziness while 4 was more serious. So the aesthetic makes a little more sense and gives us a lot of visually interesting designs and set pieces. Finally, we get to the gameplay, the most important aspect about the game. The gameplay for Metal Gear Rising is actually pretty solid. Or Rising. You get it, because it's the name, it's in the name of the game. Yeah. Thankfully, Platinum did a very nice job with the combat. It's a bit more basic than their previous efforts, but it still has a nice sense of style that separates it from other hack and slash games. I think Platinum fans might find it a little casualized, for lack of a better term, because combat isn't that difficult and it's kept simple. Platinum remedies this by offering multiple difficulties to test your hardened hack and slash skills. The level design is basically separated into sort of an arcadey mission structure in which you're given a rank depending on your performance in stealth, combat, etc. If anything, it reminds me of the previous main Metal Gear Solid, Peace Walker. The levels are of course longer and action oriented, and there's only 7. However, as I mentioned, stealth is optional if you see fit, and you can get through missions often without killing anyone. The stealth feels kind of arbitrary and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like Kojima kept it in to keep die-hard stealth fans happy with this entry. It's too slow and due to Raiden's movement it feels a little clunky. I think it would have been better if it was left out entirely. But that isn't really the focus of the game at all, so it's just kind of a minor distraction. One of the main features of the game is the ability to cut through most items by using blade mode. This is a nice novel thing, but ultimately it's more interesting on paper than in practice, as some items don't really cut that well. It's more effective when used in combat, in which you're required to make specific strikes to trigger a Zandatsu, where Raiden absorbs the energy from his enemies, or in boss battles where blade mode is encouraged during certain intervals. It works well and I'm glad they included it in the game, especially since Kojima's team had quite a bit of trouble implementing it into the initial version. Speaking of the boss battles, while the Desperado units certainly aren't as developed or interesting as Foxhound or even Dead Cell or the Cobra unit for that matter, they have bombastic personalities that are fun to watch and fight against, and the set pieces are very entertaining. The main problem with the gameplay, which a lot of mainstream game journalists have criticised, is the length of the game, which totals to approximately 4 to 5 hours, more if you count cutscenes. However, whether this is a detriment I think is debatable. A game's experience shouldn't really be restricted to how much content it offers. Honestly, I feel this is an outdated concept. While it can be a positive in cases like Xenoblade for example, for a fast-paced arcadey action game I think it offers as much as it needs to convey its themes and deliver some neat level design that takes advantage of its concepts. Pretty much I whittle it down to quality over quantity. That said, I can see why people would be discouraged by it, especially if they don't plan on doing multiple playthroughs to get all the goodies. In summary, the gameplay is good. Even if there are little problems that detract from it, it's definitely more of a Platinum game than a Kojima one, so it has a unique sense of style and some hectic action. I should also probably mention that the final boss is absolutely awesome, so look forward to that in your first playthrough. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is an enjoyable experience and I recommend it to fans of Metal Gear, Platinum or action games in general. I like the concepts and direction they took with the game, and if they develop a sequel I'd really like them to take these ideas and run with them. I admire the game for being developed at all and I commend Platinum for not doing a half-assed job like other developers have done in the past with unfinished games. And I appreciate it more for not playing it safe and sticking to its guns, which I guess is an attribute to both Kojima and Platinum, who are known for playing with expectations. In conclusion, whether it's comparable to the Solid games in terms of quality is up for contention. I try not to look at it in that way and see it as its own entity. While I prefer the stealth-based gameplay, there is certainly a place for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance in my collection. Also, it has a bitchin' soundtrack. Thanks for watching. This has been Zealous Analysis, and I'll see you next time.